This is the Garis Masculist MGTOW flyers, that is 2-3 page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 535, part 3, entitled Masculists Attack, Taking the Gender Political Initiative, Carrying Straight On. Masculists are fed up with the insufferable moral arrogance of feminists who claim that men are pigs, men are toxic, men are rapists, etc. When masculists see women as far worse gender criminals, who in most cases, in brackets, masculists estimate that about 80% of young women choose to become fluffy crappers, choosing to study fluffy crap majors at high school. That will make them fluffies as adults, close brackets. Don't bother to fip up, then expect some unmasculisted, unMGTOWed, brackets, MGTOW, MGTOW equals men going their own way, who refuse to marry, reject paternity and spend their money on themselves, close brackets, man to pay for them for decades of a man's life so she can be a man-slaving parasite. Typically, such a woman, under the influence of the pill and feminism, will screw around in her 20s, then feel her biological clock ticking hard in her 30s, realise with her fluffy crap diploma that she can't afford to pay for a middle-class house she wants to raise her kids in. So she starts looking around for some stupid, gullible, ignorant, in brackets, of masculist and MGTOW ideas, man-slavable man to pay for her to have babies in a middle-class house that he pays for. Such women are vermin to masculists, who aim to wipe out such women by forcing them to rot on the shelf, dying a slow death, removing their fluffy man-slaving genes from the gene pool. These fluffy mothers who screwed around in their 20s, a decade after the marriage, and with her 2 kids and the house that he pays for, will get bored with her 41st penis and drag him through the hated, fluffy feminist-dominated divorce court system and have him financially butchered. He will lose custody of his kids with a 90% probability. He will lose his house to her so she can raise her kids in it. He will lose half his wealth and stuff to her, forced to make child payments to her for his kids, whom he will barely be allowed to see. And if his ex-wife is a real fluffy parasite, he'll be forced to pay her alimony for the rest of his life, with no legal nor moral obligation by the fluffy feminist-dominated divorce court on her to get off her fat parasitic ass and fip up, so she continues to manslave him after the divorce the way she did before the divorce. This financial butchery of one father in 4 turns men into murderous masculists who talk increasingly of a sex war, since what is happening to 1 in 4 fathers in the hated fluffy feminist-controlled divorce courts is a war issue to them, with masculists arguing that, quote, no culture that financially butchers and destroys the lives of a quarter of its fathers can remain intact. Men will snap, pick up arms and murder thousands of these fluffy feminist divorce court lawyers and judges who destroy millions of men's lives. The masculist GECs, politicians, will aim to thoroughly reform the divorce courts, throwing out alimony, giving custody jointly to both parents by default, scrapping the halving of wealth and stuff, operating under the principle of financial independence that would be expected in a FIP society. So from the above, you can see that the masculists have a very powerful case that is stronger than the feminist case. Women manslave men for decades. Women oppress men badly in the divorce courts. There is no para, so women father-slave men for decades. Women commit paternity fraud on men. All these things make masculists murderously angry and fill them with hatred, so things have to change. Now that millions of men, thanks to the manosphere, that's in brackets, men talking about problems concerning their male role on the internet, close brackets, are having their masculist and MGTOW consciousnesses raised. The time is now ripe for masculists to go public with our ideology, to attack, to take over gender politics, to dominate it the way men dominate everything with our 10% larger brains than women's, our 4 IQ point average superior IQ than women's, our 10 times greater testosterone levels in our blood that makes us far more aggressive, ambitious, dogged, persistent, so vastly outperform women in achieving difficult tasks. So it's not surprising that men have won 99% of science Nobel Prizes. We masculists are fed up with hearing from feminists that men are the inferior sex, which science shows so clearly that men are in fact the superior sex, so that the patriarchy will never go away since it is genetically determined. Masculists are particularly angry at women, at fluffies, for their manslavery, and even angrier and more hateful at fluffy feminists, whom the masculists see not only as fluffies and hence manslavers, but as hypocrites and genociders. As hypocrites because fluffy feminists who control the divorce courts want equal rights for women in the parliaments, but reject equal obligations with men to share equally the burden of earning the living by not bothering to fip up by getting career competent educations, so expect, fluffy style, to manslave a man for decades of his life. And as genociders, because these fluffy feminists who have taken over the divorce courts have made divorce so toxic for men that they have made marriage and paternity toxic for men. So masculistic and MGTOWed men refuse to marry and have kids, which is crashing the birth rate and wiping out whole populations, so has to be stopped. Masculists have a particular hatred of fluffy feminist divorce court lawyers and judges who are seen as genociders. As millions of men become masculistic and MGTOWed, the collective male anger and hatred at fluffies and fluffy feminists will just grow and grow until the next major stage after the masculist consciousness raising that is now going on can occur. And that is the political stage in which men attack the fluffies and fluffy feminists, pushing for the establishment of the GECs, the GECs, and then push the GECs to implement the men fairing of the gender laws so that men can be liberated from decades of manslavery, a hugely greater gender crime against men than rape is against women by men. This flyer is a call to arms to men, to masculists, to MGTOWs, to attack, to take the gender political initiative away from the feminists who have had it for the past 6 decades. This decade is our decade, men's decade, the decade of men's liberation, freeing ourselves from man's slavery by fluffy women, by man-slaving women. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Author of the book Masculism, Men's Rebellion Against Being Man-Slaves to Women, an e-textbook of 530 plus masculist flyers for men's studies courses, freely downloadable in Microsoft Word format from my website. Ciao.